We've got Eric Dougherty, what's up, who shared this one from RFK, made an announcement. He stopped by over with Laura Ingraham, his first appearance, I believe, since he was confirmed as the new HHS.
This profile is for these products.
Do you think the COVID vaccine was safe and the boosters were safe? A lot of people talk about adverse effects.
We don't have good data on it, and that is a crime. The fact that we don't have a surveillance system that actually works. In 2010, CDC has a surveillance system called the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, and it's supposed to pick up injuries. But CDC did a study of that system in 2010, and that study said, and this is a published study by CDC, that it captures less than 1% of the vaccine injuries. That's inexcusable. Congress has repeatedly, and the Institute of Medicine, the National Academy of Sciences, have repeatedly ordered CDC to put together a better vaccine.
Will you require it?
And we will do that right away.
There's rumors out there that as many as 50% of the employees of HHS will be cut in the restructuring of government that
we can only hope
is helping President Trump carry out. And people are wringing their hands. Your response to that?
I don't know anything about 50% of people being cut. There's 90,000 employees.
So that's a good start. Half can go. Bye. All right. Anyway, so we'll see. No, I don't know anything about that. No, it's more like 80%. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know what the numbers are, but it is going to be curious to see what happens if U.S. aid got cut massively. Although that's mostly foreign, right? And you would imagine that even the homeland stuff, even if it is getting cut, right? And this is the thing that I think is going to come up. It's like yesterday ripping on Pennsylvania for demanding they want $3.5 billion coming to their state. And we know that all of that, or let's say most of that money, would be going to Democratic operations, right? It was all like green energy stuff, like converting electric vehicles and low-income housing. We're going to get them so they can get new stoves or whatever, and it's going to save the planet, or lower refrigerators, whatever. And we all know that's just a giant grift, okay? They come in, they like take your refrigerator out, they give you like this little crappy thing. They're like, you're saving energy now, and they pocket the rest of the money. So anyways, it's a scam. They were taking it, but the idea would be that still $3.5 billion is like going into Pennsylvania in some way, shape, or form, and somebody would see the benefit of that, right? Like even if these Democrat organizations, the idea is, and I'm not saying like this is worth giving or allowing this sort of corruption and pork. It's pork barrel spending is all it is. It's not a new concept. This has been around since the beginning of America. People want special stuff, incentives for them, and then they'll shore up the base there, right? The Democrats were spending money in Pennsylvania to keep it blue, to turn it blue, obviously. Green energy was the nice excuse. Got to save the planet. So we're going to give billions of dollars to them, and then we'll just shore up our base over there. That's not going to happen, right? They're not going to have that money anymore. Hopefully, they're going to file a lawsuit, and we'll see what the courts do on that. But it's also, as a matter of, I think, just economics, also not going to be $3.5 billion that goes into Pennsylvania. So let's say 80% of that $3.5 billion went to the Democrats, but it would trickle down because the Democrats have to go buy a boat since they've got all this USAID money now, or all of that grift since they're saving the planet. So they got to go buy a new boat or a second house. When they build that second house, that employs construction workers and so on, right? Other people who do the job. So that money might trickle back down into the economy. And now that's not going to be there. So are there unintended consequences there that might impact politically the Trump administration for making those rescissions? Okay, is a conversation that I'm sure they're having in the White House. What's the political weight of this, since that those floodgates will come off? But again, and this is the point that we were making yesterday on the show, which I think is the reality, and I'm all for cutting spending, but I think that a lot of this money will have to be spent or shifted depending on what the Supreme Court says, right? Because impoundment is a real issue, and I think that's going to come back up. But the point is, we are in the cutting phase, right? There's a cut phase and there's a bulk phase, and we're in the cutting phase right now. So we're saving those calories, we're saving that cash, and we'll disperse it in a manner that's much more in alignment with the presidential prerogatives. Remember, it was a 90-day pause. We haven't even hit the first month yet. Haven't even hit the first third of that yet. So there will be much more to come there. And the bulk phase will then be in alignment with stuff that's actually good for domestic America. And it's not siphoning the funds out for Democratic ventures and overseas aid or whatever it is. But here is one person, Kevin Hassett, who is talking about Trump's tariffs, and he is now getting more aggressive on those, as we saw yesterday. And here's what he explained is the consequence.
Have said that tariffs will be bad for the American consumer. So what does the president know here on tariffs that seemingly every other economist doesn't?
It's just false that it's necessarily bad for consumers. And a way to think about it is imagine right now, we did the estimate that last year, U.S.-based companies paid foreign governments $370 billion. Meanwhile, foreign companies paid the U.S. $57 billion in taxes. So we mailed foreign governments $370 billion, and those taxes are being paid for by U.S. citizens. And if you think that asymmetry is something that could be addressed, could be improved upon, and if we did that, it would be good for U.S. citizens. Is it good for U.S. citizens to mail $370 billion to them while they're sending $57 billion to us? And are we supposed to keep doing that because of some economic model that doesn't have the whole real world in it, says that we're better off because of inflation if we keep sending $370 billion to foreign governments? It just doesn't make sense. And so if you'd like, we could go to the blackboard and talk about the economic modeling and the elasticity of supply versus demand and all that stuff. But I usually save that for Ali Velshi.
That's funny. And that would be good. I think that the news could probably use a nice lesson on that. And much of America could as well. But it is interesting to hear them talk this way about it. Almost there is a finite supply of money, like a finite supply of dollars. If we give them more than we're getting, then at the end of the day, they're going to have more dollars, like more bank. If both sides start with $100 in their bank account and we start transacting, and at the end of the day, they've got 190 and we have 10, we have some goods and stuff, but it's not sustainable, right, in this methodology because we keep losing money like year over year over year. Where's that money coming from? The fact that we're even talking about like a finite supply is wild because they're saying we have to balance this out. Historically, they don't care about this because all they do is just print more over here of the American dollars, right? They just increase the money supply and just dump the money out. So it's never a problem that there's an imbalance, a trade imbalance, because they just print more. But that's not what they're talking about. No, we have to get this now balanced again because we can't just print more money, which is good for us because we don't like inflation, which is all that causes. And then it enriches the elite so-called oligarchical class, and we're tired of it. Now, here is Peter Navarro, the man who was victimized by the last administration, explaining trade to Jake Tapper. See if he understands it.
We learned from the historic China tariffs, the steel and aluminum tariffs, the tariffs on dishwashers and all of that, is we didn't get any inflation at all. We got price stability, but more importantly, we got our jobs back and life was good in America. There's a long process I can go through and explain why inflation really won't be a big problem, if a problem at all. And it starts with things like when these big exporting countries face a higher tariff, they have to sell to us. So what's the first thing they do, Jake, is they lower their prices. So that takes a bite out of any inflation. Then they mess around with their currencies. They manipulate them, or as the trade deficit goes down, the currency goes down. That gives us more purchasing power. That's another bite. Supply chains adjust. And equally important, Jake, for workers in America, as we get more investment here because of the tariffs, we got $15 billion when we put the steel tariffs in last time. Productivity goes up.
But I'm not the one who talks
up. Wages go up, and that means more purchasing power.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a whole different model for these guys because it's using the power of the dollar and being the default currency of the world to our advantage in a very aggressive way. And we were gaming this out with Canada. And Canada, right? If these, let's say those tariffs really went into effect, Canada really can't counter tariff the United States because they don't have dollars. Like they don't have dollars. We have dollars. They literally don't have dollars. They got to get their dollars from us. So if we tariff them, then that means that there could potentially be a trade war. So they may not have access to the dollar, and they need the dollar for liquidity so that they can buy goods and services on the international stage because everyone else is trading in dollars. So that if they want to buy oil, they transact in dollars and other things. And if Canada tariffs us back and says we're going to impose a 25% tariff on you, then that means the Canadians are not transacting in dollars. So in other words, they're not buying or selling goods to get more dollars, like the physical dollars in. Canada's not selling and we're not giving them dollars. So they have no liquidity. And then there's a trade war potential. So then what happens, right? Everybody wants to get their dollars out of Canada. And what other currency do they have? The Canadian dollar? What? Like, nobody wants to trade in that, right? It doesn't hold its value. Everybody then will, once they know this trade war goes into effect, they'll actually get off the Canadian dollar and go into the American dollar. So that currency goes down. And that's what Peter Navarro's talking about. This happens all around the world. And this is the benefit of being the reserve currency. And if Canada says, we're mad at you, where's Canada going to go? They're going to go to BRICS or something. It has 5 to 6% of the world reserves there. It's like nothing. They're basically stuck, right? And I think on a macro perspective, you could abuse this, right? You could overly abuse this and you could really incentivize people to try to find a different reserve currency. But as it stands, there really is no alternative. Like, do you want to be with China or not? And nobody wants to go and end up, under really Chinese control with their digital yuan. That's ridiculous. So Navarro's explaining that, and Europe is going to be the same unless they're going to align with Putin, who's joining BRICS, right? So it's a really interesting position. And the people who just print and hand out money, it's a whole new model for them. They have no idea what the hell they're even talking about. What are you talking about? The tariffs are going to cause increases here. No, they're not really. And they're explaining why.